Welcome to Legacy Black of Power. 13 Black R&B legends who hid they were gay until the day they died. They were legends who shined in the spotlight, yet carried shadows in their hearts. 13 Black R&B icons, voices that define generations, lived their lives guarding one hidden truth. Their love didn't match the world's expectations. Behind the chart-topping hits and dazzling smiles was a constant fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing it all. Take Luther Vandross, the romantic idol adored by millions of women. His secret only surfaced when Patti LaBelle spoke out, leaving fans stunned. But Luther wasn't the only one. There were 12 others. Who were they? These weren't just singers of love songs. They were storytellers who buried their own pain inside every lyric. Whispers, rumors, and hidden romances formed a secret web that rattled the music world. This isn't just a story about music. It's about inner battles, about legends who chose silence over risking their careers, reputations, and dignity. And now, we're pulling back the curtain. Before we reveal the 13 names who carried their truths to the grave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you won't miss a single shocking secret hidden behind the stage lights. People remember Luther Vandross for Never Too Much, for that dazzling smile, and for the velvet voice that turned love songs into anthems of longing. But behind the music, there was a hidden world, a silence so carefully guarded that it became part of his legend. He was a man who sang of eternal love, yet lived a life of solitude. And that's what makes his story so deeply heartbreaking. At the height of his 1980s fame, Luther was an R&B icon adored by millions. Yet privately, he carried a burden too heavy to share. He once confided to a trusted industry friend, "No one knows I'm in a life." Those few words, spoken softly, were a confession of truth he could never risk making public. One slip could have destroyed everything: his career, his fans' devotion, and most painfully, his mother's pride. The pressure was suffocating. For a black artist in that era, the stakes were doubled, navigating both the prejudice of society and the unforgiving spotlight of the music industry. Luther wasn't weak. He was protective. He chose silence, believing it was the only way to shield a woman he loved most. His mother. Friends recalled his fear. Fear of losing female fans, of shattering the flawless image of the perfect gentleman that the public adored. Few ever glimpsed his private world. Bruce Violence, a writer and LGBTQ icon, remembered Luther's quiet interest in him, but also his absolute discretion. Vandross would never dare hold a hand in public. The risk of headlines, of scandal, of being reduced to gossip was too high. In Hollywood, where rumors made fortunes, Luther chose the opposite, erasing his personal life until there was nothing left for anyone to find. That emptiness only fueled speculation. People whispered about his weight, about his loneliness, about those midnight phone calls where he just wanted to talk. But he never confirmed anything, never gave the world a single word. Instead, his truth lived inside the music. Listen again to Here and Now. Every lyric sounds like a promise, a vow of eternal devotion. Yet, in reality, Luther never had the chance to walk a red carpet hand in hand with the man he loved. The sweeter his lyrics, the more haunting they feel today. Those songs weren't just ballads. They were quiet cries from a heart denied the freedom to love openly. Years later, his dear friend Patti LaBelle broke the silence. She confirmed what many had suspected. Luther was gay, and he had carried that secret for a lifetime. Fans didn't weep from shock. They wept from compassion. They realized a man who gave them so much love through his music had been forced to live without it himself. For black fans especially, his story struck a deeper chord. They knew what it meant to be silent, to bury truths in order to survive in a world that wasn't ready to accept them. Luther Vandross's tragedy wasn't that he had a secret. It was that he had to keep it until the very end. He remains a dual icon, the golden voice who softened millions of hearts, and the mirror of a generation of black R&B artists who shined brilliantly in the spotlight, but had to hide their most human selves in the shadows. He once captured an entire nation with just a single line, "Do you like good music?" In 1967, sweet soul music catapulted Arthur Conley into instant stardom. Practically overnight, his voice became the soundtrack of a generation. Yet just as fast as he rose, he vanished. A star with the power to define an era stepped away from the spotlight, as if swallowed by silence. Why? According to historian Ed Ward, it wasn't a lack of talent or drive. Arthur's retreat was born from a truth he couldn't live with in public. He was a gay man. And in the unforgiving world of the 1960s and 70s R&B scene, that truth could shatter a career. Fans expected him to be the picture of a straight love idol, crooning about women and romance, nothing more, nothing less. One slip, one revealing glance, and the press would have destroyed him. On stage, his voice shook the rafters. Off stage, he shrank into shadows, avoiding parties, sidestepping conversations, terrified that the wrong gesture might betray him. Behind the bold music was a man trapped in fear. Eventually, Arthur made a decision. He walked away. He left America, the industry, and the dazzling lights, seeking a place where he could finally breathe. In Amsterdam, he reinvented himself as Lee Roberts. No longer chasing the stage, he built a small music company, producing quietly for others. There, he lived with freedom, able to love openly, laugh freely, and exist without hiding. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his life. For the first time, he wasn't pretending. Back in the U.S., fans were left confused. Some thought the shadow of his first hit was too heavy to escape. Others believed he simply grew tired of the industry. Few ever knew the real reason. That for a black artist already battling barriers, revealing his truth would have meant the end. Arthur Conley's story isn't one of scandal or collapse. It's more like a soul song left unfinished, once burning bright, then quietly fading into background to preserve peace. His legacy is unique because his choice itself carries meaning. He showed that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't staying on top of the charts. It's daring to live authentically in a world that isn't ready for you. Arthur left behind more than music. He left a silent but powerful message. The price of freedom is often everything. The stage lights of 1974 burned so bright they nearly erased the woman behind them. When Lady Marmalade soared with LaBelle's electrifying harmonies, the world saw only 3 dazzling women draped in sequins, singing about love, passion, and empowerment. What they didn't see was the truth Nona Hendryx carried offstage, a truth whispered only in the shadows of the music scene. Nona wasn't just another voice in the trio. She was its creative heartbeat. Her lyrics were fearless, pushing boundaries and often laced with the spirit of liberation. Some suspected that her words weren't just art. They were confessions, quiet attempt to unshackle herself from secrets she could never speak aloud. There's a story that once in the studio, she unveiled a song so raw, so charged, that her bandmates fell silent. They understood exactly what she was saying, but no one dared name it. In the 1970s, even within the bold and revolutionary black music community, an R&B diva openly embracing same-sex love was unthinkable. On stage, Nona shimmered with confidence, a goddess of soul and funk. But when the lights dimmed, the rumors swirled. Whispers told of secret romances, of a hidden love with another woman forced deep underground. Those close to her said that if society had been kinder, Nona would never have needed to hide. But back then, one admission could shatter a career, especially for a woman whose image was built on power and femininity. So Nona told her truth the only way she could, through music. Each song was a mask and a mirror, protecting her while revealing just enough to make listeners feel something more. Patti LaBelle herself once hinted that Nona's bravery lived in her music, even when her life couldn't. That single remark only fed the fire of curiosity, as fans and insiders sensed the depth of an internal war raging beneath her melodies. Years later, long after LaBelle's fame had cooled, Nona finally began to speak her truth in interviews. She admitted she had loved women. Not rumors, but her own words at last. It's telling, though, that she waited until time and distance made it safe. In her golden years, she no longer needed sequins and spotlights to shield her. Only then could she step forward, unafraid, and let the world know who she truly was. Keith Barrow was often described as a honey-voiced crooner Chicago, a disco soul talent whose career blazed brightly before it was tragically cut short. But behind the smooth vocals and the romantic image the public adored, Keith lived a life full of contradictions. To the world, he was a charming heartthrob with a gentle smile. In private, however, he carried a truth that only his family and closest friends knew, a truth the press of the era chose to ignore as if it never existed. The 1970s in Chicago pulsed with funk, disco, and soul, and Keith's arrival felt like a fresh breeze. His silky voice on songs like You Know You Want to Be Loved and Turn Me Up captured audiences instantly, marking him as one of the city's brightest young stars. Yet, while fans saw a handsome young man serenading women, those closest to him knew that the real Keith's affections didn't match the love stories in his songs. That constant conflict weighed heavily on him. How could he maintain the perfect image of a straight romantic idol while hiding his true feelings? Friends recall that on certain late nights in the studio, Keith would whisper his frustrations, wishing he could write music that reflected his real love. But the industry wasn't ready for that kind of honesty, especially not from a young black artist. The pressures were already crushing, and revealing his truth could have slammed the door on his career before it ever began. So, Keith poured his emotions into melodies that felt sincere, even if listeners never fully understood what he was truly singing about. What makes his story even more heartbreaking is how the media erased this personal side of him. They praised his talent, his potential, his voice, but they never touched the deeper story, the one that revealed who Keith really was. Maybe society wasn't ready. Maybe the industry needed to protect its carefully crafted image of him. Whatever the reason, it left Keith carrying his burden alone. By 1983, his light was gone far too soon. Fans mourned the loss of a rising star, while those who truly knew him grieved even more deeply, knowing he never got the chance to live his truth openly. There were no scandals, no confessions, just a gifted soul who quietly passed away, leaving behind songs as gentle and bittersweet as his own shadowed life. Looking back, Keith Barrow wasn't just a singer. He was a fragile echo of soul and disco, a voice that gave joy to others, even as he quietly sacrificed pieces of himself. And it's that silence, that haunting absence of recognition for his true self, that makes his story one of the most unforgettable tragedies in music history. Sometimes the brightest stage lights can't reveal the shadows hidden deep within an artist's soul. Little Richard never walked on stage as an ordinary man. He erupted into the spotlight with sky-high hair, bold makeup, and glittering suits, belting out feverish lyrics that shook the world to its core. But behind that dazzling spectacle burned a secret flame, brilliant, conflicted, and never truly free. Crowned the architect of rock and roll, Richard's roots actually stretched back to the sacred sounds of soul and gospel. He grew up a young black man in Georgia, hemmed in by a strict church and society unwilling to accept difference. His early life became a series of escapes, fleeing a family that judged him, a church that condemned him, and even himself, as the stage demanded a persona that was both outrageous and carefully guarded. In 1995, he stunned the world by calling himself omnisexual, a declaration that seemed to smash every stereotype and challenge every prejudice. Yet not long after, he retracted the words, retreating into safer territory. This back and forth only deepened the public's confusion, but revealed the truth. Richard lived in constant battle between his yearning to be authentic and his terror of losing everything. Friends say he often whispered backstage that he felt like a flame trapped behind a mask. On stage, he roared like fire. Off stage, that fire flickered in silence. The era was merciless toward black performers, and for someone daring to blur gender lines, the risks were even greater. Richard knew that one honest confession could shatter his career overnight. Yet this very struggle became his greatest legacy. By straddling the line between masculine and feminine, between the accepted and the forbidden, Little Richard didn't just shape rock and roll. He rewrote the language of American music itself. Prince, David Bowie, and countless R&B artists followed in his wake, emboldened by his audacity to touch the untouchable. Richard gave the world timeless anthems like Tutti Frutti and Long Tall Sally. But more than music, he left behind a symbol, a queer black icon who embodied the contradictions of a generation too afraid to come out, yet hungry for freedom. He may have lived and died caught in paradox, but his flame endures, both hidden and eternal, lighting the path for every artist who dares to live at the edge of truth. Johnny Mathis stepped into the spotlight with flawless charm, tailored suits, a gentle smile, and a voice so smooth it felt like honey pouring over glass. Unlike the fiery R&B stars of his era, he didn't shout rebel or set stages ablaze with chaos. Instead, he moved hearts with tender ballads, becoming one of the most cherished vocalists of the 1950s and 60s. But behind that polished image was a silence that puzzled fans for decades, the quiet truth of who he really was. Then, in 1982, during a brief interview, Johnny shocked the world with a single unguarded sentence. "Homosexuality is a way of life that I've grown accustomed to." It was just one line, but it cracked the perfect facade he had so carefully built. And then nothing. No explanation, no follow-up, no more words. The public was left bewildered. The press covered it half-heartedly, then let it fade. Meanwhile, Johnny went right on singing his love songs, his statement lingering in the air like an unanswered question. That silence only fueled the rumors. Colleagues whispered that Johnny had always been private, a man who rarely let anyone peek behind the curtain. His songs were his confessions, but his personal life remained locked away. Some believe his silence was self-preservation, an act of survival in a time when the world wasn't kind to those who lived openly. Others thought it was simply his way of keeping control, refusing to let his life become tabloid fodder. What's remarkable is that he never denied it. He never retracted his words or claimed misunderstanding. By saying nothing more, his silence became its own kind of statement, louder than any public confession. And as fans revisited classics like Misty or Chances Are, the lyrics took on haunting new meaning. People began to wonder, who was he really singing to? Was there a hidden love behind those words? That ambiguity only deepened the beauty of his music, layering it with mystery and heartbreak. Later in life, Johnny would sometimes admit that the statement brought him trouble, but he always said it with a smile, as if to keep the world at arm's length, never letting anyone too close. In the end, it was a silence, measured, deliberate, and enduring, that became the most powerful declaration of his life. Billy Preston wasn't just the fifth Beatle. He was a musical force of nature, one of the few keyboardists alive who could make an entire orchestra ignite with nothing more than a handful of notes. From Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin to the Rolling Stones and the Beatles themselves, every legend wanted Billy at their side. On stage, his fingers were pure fire. Off stage, his smile lit up every room. But behind that joyful presence was a man carrying a truth he never dared to play out loud. Friends said Billy could be the life of the party one moment, then fall into a deep, quiet stillness when the curtain closed. That silence wasn't emptiness. It was weight. For his whole life, Billy kept a secret locked away, knowing the world of his time wasn't ready to accept it. The rumors swirled for decades, whispered on tour buses and in green rooms, but never spoken into microphones. Only in his later years, as illness dimmed his light, did he finally speak more freely among trusted friends. Even then, it was private, whispered confessions instead of public declarations. The tragedy is that Billy Preston embodied musical freedom. His playing had no boundaries, no rules. He gave the Beatles a new sound. He gave R&B another heartbeat. He showed the world what freedom sounded like. Yet in his own life, he was anything but free. He lived by silence, by restraint, hiding his truest self while his music screamed liberation. In the black music community, Billy became a symbol, not of scandal, but of sacrifice. He built a flawless career by masking his personal truth. No explosive exposés, no public confessions, just brilliance, punctuated by private voids. He lived and died as one of music's greatest enigmas. Maybe that silence is what makes his story so haunting. His songs soar across the globe, breaking every barrier. But the most important notes, the ones that told who Billy Preston truly was, remained hidden, echoing only in the darkness. A genius defined not just by the music he gave us, but by the truths he never could. To truly understand Donny Hathaway, you can't just look at his smile, you have to look into his eyes. They were windows to the storm, always carrying something unspoken. On stage, his voice was raw and soul-stirring, powerful enough to silence a room before it erupted in thunderous applause. But off stage, Donny was a man of contradictions, layered, complex, and full of secrets that were never fully told. To his fans, he was always singing a song for you, offering his heart to the world. Yet, he never left behind a song that revealed the man behind the music. Within the music industry, quiet whispers lingered that Donny had tender affections for certain male colleagues. No one ever proved it. No evidence ever surfaced. Only fragments of rumors passed from one friend to another. Some claimed you could hear it in his voice, the aching tenderness, the anguish woven into his lyrics, the look in his eyes that spoke volumes more than words ever could. The truth was, Donny battled himself constantly. He carried a gift beyond measure, but also a soul as fragile as glass. In recording sessions, he would sometimes crumble into anxiety or vanish behind a closed door for hours, lost in turmoil no one else could reach. It was this private storm that made many believe he lived with a secret too heavy to name. His life ended far too soon, and his tragic death only fanned the flames of speculation. Listeners began to treat his songs like diary entries, reading hidden truths in every lyric. For all we know, sounded like a farewell, while someday we'll all be free carried the weight of a man pleading for release. Each note became a clue, a locked door leading to the eternal question. Who did Donny truly love? And who held the key to his soul? The world never received a clear answer. But Donny Hathaway left behind something more lasting than any confession, a musical legacy that aches, weeps, and breathes with mystery. It is this very enigma that turned him from a singer into a legend, a man who carried a storm inside him, hiding truths behind melodies that will never die. And Donny was not alone. The story of Marvin Gaye was no less complicated. His music was fire, passion, a cry from the core of human desire. Sexual healing was more than just a hit. It was a bold proclamation to the world. Yet, behind a man daring enough to sing so fearlessly, there were whispers too, secrets tucked away in the shadows, never confirmed, only murmured backstage. Quincy Jones once sent shockwaves to the entertainment world when he boldly claimed that soul legend Marvin Gaye and Hollywood icon Marlon Brando shared a secret, intimate connection. The comments spread like wildfire, igniting gossip columns and shaking the artistic community to its core. Marvin's family rushed to deny the allegation, dismissing it as nothing more than rumor. But as history has shown in show business, denial often fans the flames rather than putting them out. The whispers only grew louder, darker, and more intriguing. In the Motown universe, Marvin Gaye was always seen as a complicated, restless spirit. He spent his life torn between the heavy expectations of his record label, his family, and the adoring public. It often seemed like he was living two lives. On stage, he was magnetic, a voice of pure seduction. But offstage, his private world was tangled in secrecy and elusive relationships. That's why the rumors refused to die. Fans listened to Let's Get On and asked themselves, who exactly was Marvin singing to? They felt the raw passion in sexual healing and wondered if his sensuality truly knew no boundaries. This ambiguity, this haunting uncertainty, turned Marvin into more than a star. He became a symbol of both desire and mystery. To this day, no one has ever been able to prove or disprove the story. Yet one truth stands unshakable. Marvin Gaye left behind a timeless legacy, not only in his music, but in the endless curiosity surrounding his private life. His legend exists in the space where fact and rumor blur together, where the truth hides behind a curtain of stardom. Some stars shine so brilliantly that their light blinds us from ever seeing the depths of their souls. Whitney Houston is perhaps the perfect example of brilliance shadowed by mystery. When she stepped on stage and belted out, "I will always love you," the entire world seemed to freeze, caught in the spell of her voice. But behind that radiant light were untold stories, secrets that lived only in whispers, carried by those who had once stood closest to her. One of those whispers carried the name Robin Crawford. She wasn't just Whitney's assistant. She was her confidant, her best friend, and the figure who trailed her like a shadow. Their bond was undeniable, captured in countless photographs and quiet moments that suggested their relationship reached far beyond the boundaries of ordinary friendship. People called them inseparable. Yet Whitney never once stepped before the public to explain or confirm anything. Her silence only deepened the mystery, turning their connection into one of R&B's greatest unanswered questions. That silence broke decades later, in 2019, when Robin released her memoir. For the first time, she spoke openly about their affection, offering her truth. "I don't think Whitney was gay. I think she was bisexual." It was a statement that filled in part of the hazy portrait of Whitney. But still, it remained only Robin's perspective, not a truth the superstar herself had ever confirmed. And perhaps that's why the story still lingers, elusive, forever stirring curiosity. In a world where black music often carried the weight of prejudice and scrutiny, Whitney's choice to stay silent wasn't just personal. It was survival. To protect her career, to preserve the image of a flawless star adored by millions, she sacrificed her right to name and live her most intimate truths. Yet that very silence was a burden, a private ache that no spotlight could erase. Fans remember Whitney for her soaring records, her once-in-a-generation voice, and performances that left audiences breathless. But beneath the applause lived a loneliness few dare to speak of. When she left this world, she left behind not only a legacy of music, but also an unresolved story, an invisible thread binding her name to Robin's, a bond that still drifts like a silent wind through her immortal melodies. Maybe that's a haunting part. The love that never found its voice remains the quietest, yet most powerful song of all. Teddy Pendergrass could set hearts on fire with nothing more than a sigh and turn off the lights. His voice was pure heat, sultry, commanding, irresistible. Women were enchanted, men were envious, and Teddy seemed untouchable at the height of his fame. But behind the glow of his stardom, whispers began to spread, rumors that painted a more complicated picture than the one on stage. Industry insiders murmured about secret relationships, hinting that Teddy's private life wasn't what it appeared to be. No one ever went on record, and no major outlet dared to print it, but the talk never went away. The speculation was fueled by his tightly guarded personal life, ambiguous friendships, and the drastic turn his life took after that fateful car crash in 1982. The accident left Teddy paralyzed from the chest down, shattering his image as the ultimate ladies' man. To some, that moment deepened the mystery. Had he been hiding something all along? Was the accident a tragic twist that also exposed the silence he kept so carefully? Yet Teddy refused to fade. He returned to the stage in a wheelchair, his voice still blazing with passion, singing joy and love TKO with the same fire that had made him a legend. But through it all, he never once addressed the rumors. His silence became its own statement, a shield of self-preservation and a haunting question mark that lingers to this day. That's what makes Teddy's story unforgettable. The man celebrated as the king of love songs for women was shadowed by whispers of another truth. This contradiction didn't diminish his legend, it deepened it, turning him into one of R&B's most enigmatic figures. Some voices, when they sing, carry not just melody, but sorrow, so much that you feel swept into an endless storm. Teddy's was one of those voices. And maybe that's why, decades later, his songs don't just play, they haunt. Phyllis Hyman had a voice that could stop you in your tracks. Smooth, soulful, and overflowing with emotion. When she sang You Know How to Love Me, it felt like she was letting you in on a secret. But behind the spotlight and applause, Phyllis carried a world of shadows and unspoken truths. Within the music community, whispers floated, rumors that Phyllis's heart had once belonged not only to men, but also to a dear female companion. There were no photographs, no diary entries to prove it, just fragments of gossip passed from one backstage conversation to another. And yet, those very whispers added to her mystique, like a haunting melody left unresolved. What made Phyllis unforgettable wasn't only her deep, dramatic voice. It was a haunting contrast between her dazzling career and her private loneliness. Her songs soared on the charts, but her heart seemed weighed down by solitude. When she left this world far too soon, the rumors only grew louder. Was Phyllis hiding her truest self to protect her career? Were the lyrics she sang, aching with desire and longing, the confession she could never speak aloud? To this day, when fans play Living All Alone, they can feel the raw solitude in every note. Her voice carries a sorrow that seems personal, secret, almost sacred, an ache only she fully knew. And perhaps that was the greatest paradox of Phyllis Hyman's life, that her silence, her hidden loves, and her quiet pain became the very thing that made her music so timeless, tragic, beautiful, and unforgettable. If Marvin Gaye was a fiery heart of Motown's love songs, then Billy Paul was a tender whisper of Philadelphia soul. When Me and Mrs. Jones hit the airwaves, the world embraced him as a soft-spoken romantic, a storyteller of secret passions and forbidden affairs. But behind the velvet voice and timeless ballads, Billy carried whispers that refuse to fade, rumors that painted him as one of R&B's most enigmatic figures. Backstage, among musicians and insiders, people quietly speculated about his hidden affections. Whispers of same-sex love followed him through the years, though Billy never confirmed nor denied them. There was never proof, only shadows and murmurs. That silence left the story suspended between myth and truth, making him even more mysterious. Unlike many of his peers, Billy guarded his private life fiercely. To the public, he was simply the man who gave us a haunting tale of a man and a woman's secret rendezvous. But fans often wondered, did he ever write songs never released, that spoke a love too dangerous, too unspoken for its time? That unanswered question lingers, adding a hidden layer to his legacy. Looking back now, Billy Paul is not just the sweet voice of Philadelphia. He's a figure cloaked in intrigue, a reminder that what an audience hears on stage is only part of the story. The rest, his deepest truths, may forever remain buried in the silence between the notes. And Billy's story is not unique. Across R&B, the greatest voices carried not only melodies of love, desire, and freedom, but also secrets they could never openly share. They sang about passion, yet were denied the chance to live it fully. This wasn't just personal tragedy. It was a cruel weight of an era where Black artists fought to survive in a ruthless industry while concealing pieces of their very soul. The whispers, the shadows, the secrets behind the spotlight, these are what made them legendary. Their music wasn't just about what they revealed, but also about what they had to hide. And that haunting silence makes their songs echo even louder today. When we remember them, we don't just hear sorrow. We feel empathy. We feel awe. And perhaps it's that very mystery, the truths never spoken, that makes them immortal. If this story moved you, help us keep their flame alive. Hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the untold stories that shaped music history. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Now go ahead and check out our other videos waiting for you on screen. Until next time.